Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, quite a few different styles, and the one that we're going to have a look at today is another style that I've not had from them before, and a style that I don't get to review all that many of here on the channel. So looking forward to it, fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head toward the Stockholm area once again. We're going to go a little bit to the southwest of the city though and visit Gnesta, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from Den Bryggande Höllandaren, or the Brewing Dutchman as you might say in English. But this particular beer is called Blonder Sonja. It comes in at 5.9% ABV and they're describing this one as an Abbey Pale Ale. So I guess we might describe this one as a Belgian blonde, or perhaps you could call it a Patters beer as well actually, the sort of lowest ABV, most kind of sessionable beer that you'll find from the Abbey breweries, of course. But yeah, nice to return to these guys once again. This beer was released as part of the Lokala och Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for June of 2021. And yeah, that means I've been sitting on it for about a month, but it still should be in good condition, I'm sure. The last beer I had from these guys, I think, was called Black Like My Soul, and that one was a black IPA, if I remember rightly, or perhaps a Schwarzbier, I forget, but I do remember enjoying that one. And I have had solid beers from these guys before, so when I saw they were doing a sort of Belgian blonde beer, I thought, you know, I want to go at that. So yeah, looking forward to it, and as I say, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So let's crack on with the review. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Den Bryggande Höllandaren before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Den Bryggande Höllandaren then, on to my brewery notes. So, Den Bryggande Höllandaren, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Gnesta in Södermanland to the southwest of Stockholm. But this town has only 5,500 people roughly, and it was home to the Holmen brewery from 1870 until the 1960s. But Den Bryggande Höllandaren, the Brewing Dutchman, were founded in 2013 by husband and wife team Wilbert Duvestein and Theresa McGovern, who are from the Netherlands and America respectively. But they moved to Sweden a few years ago from Rotterdam, and Wilbert says that he wanted to combine both Dutch and Swedish brewing techniques and beer traditions and things like this, and this is why he went for calling the brewery the Brewing Dutchman, Den Bryggande Höllandaren. But Wilbert had been a home brewer for a long time, and he wanted to turn his passion into a profession, and he's done that quite successfully. But initially he wanted to brew individual batches of 500 litres, but he later decided that he was going to produce a small core range of 3 beers to get them into Systembolaget, and he's done that already. But over the last few years they've been gradually expanding their capacity, and they now produce sour beers and do some barrel aging as well as offering brewing courses. If you go and have a look at their website as well, they also are they also have this really old building, which is very nice, and it would be cool to go up there and stay in that sometime. So maybe this is one of the breweries that I need to arrange to do a meet the brewery with, and my dad and I can go up and have a little look at it. We love exploring new places like this, and there's quite a few breweries actually in the Stockholm area that have indicated they would be keen to do a little meet the brewery segment. So to get these guys involved in that as well, it could be quite interesting. We'll need to see about that. But yeah, as I say, over the last few years they have been expanding a little bit. And as of July 2021, they've produced 30 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Den Bryggande Höllandaren for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But like I say, quite a few different styles available from these guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of their sour beers. I think the beer that I've I've ordered for next month actually is going to be a sour one. So yeah, that should be quite interesting when that review comes around. But yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer itself then. So as you can see, it's very warm here in Sweden at the moment, so the bottle is sweating a little bit, even though it's only been out the fridge about 5 minutes or so. You can already see it's kind of soaking into the label a little bit. But yeah, here you can see it, Blonder Sonja. Comes in at 5.9% ABV as we said, and it's either like a Patters beer or a Belgian blonde, however you want to describe it. But there you can see on the back, there is the Den Bryggande Höllandaren symbol actually, and that is also on the bottle cap there, and that's Wilbur and his fluffy hair of course. But yeah, craft brewery, Gnesta, and yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one. So yeah, this is the standard presentation of the beers. Of course, they usually change colour and the graphics slightly depending on what beer it is. But yeah, I believe I paid about 30 Swedish kronor for this. So that's roughly about €3 for the bottle, about £2.50 sterling for those of you watching back in the motherland of Scotland. And in the US, you know, what's that, about $3.50 American, something like that. But yeah, 5.9% Belgian blonde Patters beer. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious to see what it has in store for us. So, kind of calm as we open up. Sometimes these Belgian style beers can be a little bit crazy, but this one, it seems to be behaving itself. So, all good so far. Like I say, let's get it out and into the glass and see how we go. But yeah, one thing I should say on this is that one of my go-to beers, although I very rarely drink outside of my beer reviews these days, because I'm trying so many beers at the moment because I've got a ridiculous supply. But yeah, one of my go-to beers is actually Leffe Blonde. I do enjoy a good Leffe, actually. But yeah, the other one would be Pilsner Urquell. I really enjoy that. And I'm sure if I had access to Augustiner or Paulaner on a regular basis, you know, or even Hofbräu, you know, one of these German Helles beers, I'd probably be having a good few of those as well. But I do enjoy Leffe and a good Belgian blonde. So this is one of the main reasons why I got this beer actually, and I knew the brewer was Dutch obviously as well. So yeah, I've had some very nice Belgian style Belgian blonde beers from the Netherlands too. But yeah, this is, come to think of it, this is maybe a brewery that I should get the Dutch guys on to. I maybe need to give them a beer, each of them a beer from this brewery, and they can review that in the Dutch Beer Collective. So yeah, another thing to think about. But yeah, as you can see with this one, and as you would expect, it's poured a lovely bright golden blonde colour. But before the head disappears, we can say that it poured with just about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. I don't think this is a perfect white head on this one, but it's faded away to just be a very, very thin kind of foamy layer, but the ring around the edge of the glass is a little bit thicker. But yeah, a lovely kind of ivory cream coloured head on this one. But as you can see, the head is poured to be, the beer itself rather, is poured to be a lovely kind of bright golden straw colour. So remember, when it comes to the colour of your beer, that's determined by a couple of different factors. One, the type of malts that you use, that determines the magnitude of the colour of the beer, of course. The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts or barrel aging will of course play a role in that as well. When it comes to Belgian blonde beers and things like this, quite often they will add a little bit of brew sugar into these, and that's why Belgian beers tend to have a slightly higher alcohol content, but they still maintain a relatively light mouthfeel, and that's why you get a bit of the crispness from the bottle conditioning of course as well, because of the CO2 that's generated from the brew sugar. But yeah, that's the thing in there. So I think depending on what type of sugar you use in these Belgian beers, that can also affect the colour slightly as well. I'm not sure how common it is to use a little bit of brew sugar in the blondes right enough, but definitely in the doubles, the triples, and the quadruples as well, they use some brew sugar. But as I say, for Patters beers and blondes, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, certainly looks the part. One or two big bubbles sticking to the side there, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the glass there, and you can see there are one or two little bits of particulate matter just floating around in there. There was a wee bit of a kind of base layer of sediment in the bottom of the bottle there. But in terms of a Belgian blonde or a Patters beer, whatever we're going to call this one, it certainly looks the part. So nothing more to say about the appearance. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. I have to say, very curious about this. So yeah, it does smell very nice actually. You know, it smells kind of how you would expect from the style, But the thing that you do notice with this is that it comes across as very clean, and this is one of the things you quite often get with Belgian style beers brewed in the Nordic countries. They have the right flavour profile, but they just smell, you know, very, very clean and a little bit more kind of crisp. And a lot of that, I would say, is probably due to the water quality that we get up here. But it's the same in Scotland. You know, there's a Belgian style brewery in Scotland, 6 degrees north, and it's the same. It's just the water that makes the beer seem a little bit different. I think I don't know the exact mineral qualities and things like that you'll get in the water in Belgium and the Netherlands, of course. But yeah, the water, it's almost just like it feels cleaner and it smells a bit cleaner, if that makes sense. Although I'm sure there's nothing wrong with the quality of water down there, of course. I think it's maybe in the Scottish mindset, you know, it's one thing we're very proud of in Scotland is our tap water, and then, you know, you notice that when you come to the Nordic countries, it is quite similar to that, actually. But yeah, you can just smell how clean this beer is. It just smells very clean and very sort of crisp and fresh. That's the first thing you'll notice. But underneath that, of course, you're getting these lovely big Belgian yeasty elements out of it. So yeah, straight away with this beer, you can smell that doughy, yeasty backbone to it. You get a little bit of the kind of clovey spice in there. You get a few of those kind of banana and bubblegummy elements. These are all things that you would expect of the style, but definitely a little bit. There's a little mix of a kind of wholemealy and white bread in this one, a bit of a bread crusty quality, that's for sure. Maybe some very, very, very slightly woody undertones. But yeah, the brown sugar note in this one is quite interesting. It's quite honey-like, but at the same time, you get a little bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive sort of thing, and all of these notes that I've been describing to you, they just feel as if they're sort of mashed up together in this sort of doughy, yeasty kind of thing. So yeah, like I say, bit of a, you know, the base of the beer smells that it's that, you know, doughy, yeasty, banana-y, clovey, bubblegummy sort of spice thing. Bubblegum maybe is a bit too far from this one. It doesn't smell quite sweet enough to be bubblegum, I don't think. It's a bit more kind of banana and clovey, I would say. But then yeah, a little bit of a white bread, a little bit of a very slight wholemeal bread to this one, and kind of bread crusty qualities. Wee bit of honey, a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's the malty and yeasty side of the aroma in this beer summed up quite nicely, to be honest with you. And as I say, it smells at the same time, while it does sort of almost thicken out a little bit the more that you smell of it, the beer still does come across as very, very clean and things in its aroma. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, on the hoppy part of the beer, when you sugar the beer up a little bit, as I say, the yeasty malty side just kind of thickens out a little bit. But I'd be very curious to know exactly what hops have been used in this one. I mean, normally with Belgian blondes, you'll get some kind of noble hop, so or a Belgian grown hop, so it would be maybe like a Hallertau or a Tettnanger. I know that quite a few breweries these days in the Netherlands use Czech Sats for these kind of Abbey type beers. So yeah, it could be something like that in this one, because when you smell it, you know, you get everything you would kind of expect from a noble hop. So it's got a little bit of a kind of earthiness in it, but there's a little bit of a herbal quality as well. For me, there's a good little bit of floral aromaticity, and it almost comes across as a little bit spicy in a sense, but at the same time it's a little bit smooth, and with the smoothness in there, it makes me wonder, could it be a Slovenian hop, you know, like Styrian Goldings or Dana or something like this, because the Slovenian noble hops that you get, they've got this very distinct smoothness. Like I say, the Slovenian ones are smooth, the Czech ones are a little bit more spicy, and the German ones are quite bright. An outside bet would be something from Poland, like Lubelski or something like that, but I don't know how likely that is, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, a little bit of earthiness on the green component, some nice herbal qualities in there as well, which sort of matches up with the yeasty backbone of the beer nicely, but then a little bit of a bright floral aromaticity and a wee touch of a very, very slightly grassy zestiness to the beer. But yeah, fruity side of things then. Let's look at that. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer is again what you'd expect from this style. There's a little touch of apricot in there. So yeah, very slight little dried apricot note in there. Some sultanas as well. Just to be clear, by sultanas I mean like dried white green grapes. I get people asking me about this quite often. So for me, sultanas, dried white green grapes. The raisins are the purple ones. But yeah, sultanas, apricots, and then I do get quite a little bit of a kind of peary note out of this one as well. And maybe a teeny little hint of like an apple or something like that, like these kind of peary apple-y notes out of the beer. But yeah, you've also got a nice kind of You can also feel the kind of pear and stuff mixing in, the peary appley notes mixing in with the kind of grassy esters that this beer has. So that's quite interesting as well. But yeah, I think that describes the aroma of this one quite well. So it's about time that we had a taste of this beer then. So yeah, this one is the Blonder Sonja, a 5.9% Belgian blonde from Den Bryggande Höllandaren, the Brewing Dutchman in Gnesta near Stockholm. As I say, take a bit of time to ponder over that aroma, but we're going to taste this one now. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skull, cheers, and proost, as they would say in the Netherlands. Yeah, that's very nice actually, it is. And as I said, as I was suspecting it might be from the aroma, correct flavour profile, it's just got that, you know, Nordic cleanliness to it, as I always say. So yeah, thumbs up to Den Bryggande Höllandaren with this one. It's very drinkable. Sort of Belgian blonde, this one. So yeah, I think a Rapaters beer, although there's quite a few of these sort of styles in Belgium that kind of overlap in a sense. So I think a Pater's beer technically is a little bit more yeasty in a sense, as are all the kind of Abbey beers. Whereas, you know, if you get one of these Belgian golden ales or whatever, and if they're calling it a pale ale, then potentially it's a little bit more hoppy. So yeah, you have to be very careful when you're thinking about these. Actually, and that's probably something that I should have mentioned a wee bit earlier on in the video as well. But yeah, it's just when I took the first taste of it, it has got a wee bit more kind of hoppy character to it. So yeah, maybe Belgian golden ale is a good description for this one as well. But whatever it is, it's a very nice drinkable beer. So let's try and break down the flavour for you a little bit more and see how this beer mellows out. But yeah, I like this one. As I say, another solid beer from these guys, and a very crisp and clean example of like a Belgian blonde or Belgian pale ale or whatever this one is. So yeah, let's break this down for you then. So straight away across the middle of your palate then, you can feel a little bit of a sort of almost crackery base to this one. For the Swedes watching, you know, knäckebröd, it's a little bit like that. It has got a wee bit of that kind of crackery crispness to it. But then towards the back of the palate and the back, you know, the back third of your palate, and I would say back half of the middle third of your palate, and it creeps into the front half of the middle third of your palate as well. This is where you're getting those typical yeasty elements. You know, for me, the Belgian styles are all about the yeastiness. But yeah. So yeah, you do get that coming out of the beer a little bit sort of later on. But yeah, like I say, a little bit of an almost knäckebröd and thing, just a sort of crackery type note forming the backbone of this beer. So on top of that then, you can feel in the middle third of your palate, you get a more kind of almost wholemeal brown bready sort of layer. You can feel that in there. But as you go to either end of the middle third of your palate, you get a more kind of bread crusty element out of the beer. But then the yeastiness, actually, the more that I drink of this, it's more like the middle third of your palate is more malty and the back third of your palate is the more yeasty side of things. So I think we'll probably separate it out that way, to be honest. As I say, you get a bit of the yeast creeping in. On the back half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the yeastiness just creeping over, and you get a slightly thicker mix of wholemeal and white bready notes there. But then as you go into the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there is a wee bit of a straight up caramel in this one, and as you move further out from that, the brown sugars just get a little bit lighter and more kind of honey-like, sort of honeycomb-like, and then as you push out towards the edge of the middle to the extremities of your palate, I should say, that's when you get the more McVitie's digestive biscuit type notes out of this one. So I really like how that goes together in this beer as well, actually. So yeah, this one's a bit interesting in the sense too, because it's the yeasty notes are a little bit more kind of separated from the malt in a sense, whereas the ones I've had before, it always feels that the yeast is kind of underneath the malt in a sense. So that's quite interesting too, but this might be a thing with just to do with the mouthfeel, because as I say, it just feels very, very clean, this beer. It's got a real sort of clean, oily kind of slipness to it, which I like. I do like that about this beer. It's interesting to have something that has the same flavour profile, but the flavours just come out in different ways. So I like that for sure. But I think other than what we've said, apart from a tiny little bit of a woody undertone to the beer on the front half of that middle third of your palate, other than that, there's not much in the way that there's not too much else that we really need to say about this one in that sense. So again, I can appreciate how this beer really goes together on that malty side of things. But let's focus on the yeasty part of the beer then. So border region between the back, the middle and back third of your palate. What you'll feel there is that it starts to thicken. The beer really thickens up quite a bit as you go into that border region. So you get a bit more of a bread crusty note there, but then the base layer of that back third of your palate, you certainly do get a little bit of that Knecke brewed in this one. You get a little bit of that sort of crackery base, but then the yeast really piles on top of that, which is kind of interesting. So within that yeasty quality, you do get a little bit of the banana, you get a wee bit of the clove, maybe there's a tiny little hint of bubblegum. I mean, the further you go into the aftertaste, you're getting all of these things, but within that you can also feel a little bit of the kind of honey element coming out of the beer as well, a little bit of that kind of honey-like brown sugary note there. So the flavour on the back third of your palate with this one is very, very tall actually, and it's one of these beers that if you go from back your palate, it's like this, and it just condenses down, and then as you reach the middle third of your palate, it goes down quite rapidly. Then you've got the cracker and the kind of biscuity flavours and the brown sugars in the middle of the palate too. So it's really interesting to see how that dynamic of the beer comes out. But yeah, like I say, unlike other sort of Belgian blondes, Patters beers, or whatever I've had, the yeast doesn't come quite as far forward in the palate on this one for me, at least not in the same thickness. You can feel it creeping forward a little bit, especially the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, there's quite a bit more separation in this beer geographically, if we can put it like that, between the malty and the yeasty part of the beer. So I like that about this one. That's interesting. But yeah, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of the beer quite well, to be honest with you. So let's focus on the hoppy and fruity parts of the beer then. So back corners of the palate, then you get a little touch of grassiness a little touch of earthiness, out of the beer. And as you move further forward from that, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity out of it. The way that it comes out in this one, it's either, I don't think it's Chekhov's, because it's not quite as spicy to be Chekhov's. I think this might be a Slovenian hop, or perhaps one of the lower alpha acid German ones that's in here, a straight up Hallertau or Tittnanger, something like that. I'd be very curious to know. But anyway, around the front curve of the palate, you get a little bit of a lighter grassiness there, and the grassiness just has a little touch of zestiness to it, and it's that slight zestiness that makes me a bit unsure about it being Slovenian. It makes me think it might be one of the German hops that's in here. But yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer. So yeah, interesting beer from that perspective too. The hoppy side of the beer is quite nice, wee bit earthy, little touch herbal, bit of floral aromaticity, then a lighter grassiness with just a wee tiny touch of zestiness. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of things then. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate then. Again, you get a wee bit of a bready build up in there. You can feel a wee touch of bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a nice kind of smooth, almost a little bit of a smooth, kind of a little bit of a smoother white bready, kind of brown bready element underneath it as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, on the fruity part of the beer then, as I always say, that little oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters come out of the beer, you get that just sitting on top of those little elements that I've described. So it's kind of what we picked up in the aroma. You get a wee bit of a kind of sultana-like quality in there. There's a bit of a kind of apricot-y note. There's a wee bit of a more intense citrus at the very back of that front third of your palate. But yeah, sultanas and apricots as you move further forward, and as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, a little bit more peary, a tiny little hint of an almost slightly spicy apple. Then you start to get all the kind of grassy, zesty esters as you reach the front tip of the tongue. I think that describes the fruity part of the beer as much as we can, really, in this one. But yeah, this is, as I say, it's got all the types of flavours that you expect in this one, but the thing that really strikes me about this beer is the sort of separation between the malty part of the beer and the yeasty side of things. So that's a very interesting take home from this one, because it's quite unusual for the style, at least compared to what I've had before. But yeah, on the mouthfeel then, to round off the review, I think we can say this is a fairly light-bodied beer. It's at the top end of light-bodied. Yeah, light-bodied. Wee bit of carbonate, you know, the carbonate has a tiny little bit of crispness to it, but it's actually quite a light but still quite slick beer in a sense, so there's a wee bit of that oily character in there. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this one's, you know, like 15 IBUs, maybe 20, something like that. It's quite a low IBU beer, this one, which is, again, what you'd expect from the style. Like I say, the malty base is quite nice, a wee bit of graininess to it and a bit of sweetness as well. You've got a good bit of yeasty smoothness and things in this beer. Then you've also got a little bit of a kind of fruity, you've got a little bit of a kind of juicy, fruity character there as well. So I like how this beer goes about its business in that sense too. So yeah, interesting one. This it is quite interesting from that perspective too. So yeah, one other thing I think I would add about this, I was talking about brew sugar earlier. I do reckon this one has a little touch of that in it, because you do get a wee bit of honey sort of flavour in this one, and I think it's a bit difficult to get that particular flavour, if you like, from malt. I mean, you usually get a slightly more biscuity quality or a more kind of oily caramel from the beer. So I do think there is a little touch of one of these brew sugars in here. So I would add that as a final point to this review. But yeah, a very nice Belgian style blonde, this one. I wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. In fact, probably my only potential complaint about this would be that it's sold as a 330 rather than a 440 can or a 500ml. I don't like, yeah, that's one of the things I always moan about with Helles and Pilsner beers from these little craft breweries, is that they it's always 330s, and I don't like that. Lagers and light beers like this should be sold as half litres, but that's just me. Yeah, positive vibes from this beer for sure. So this would be I think this could actually be a nice core beer for them going forward, actually, if they have the capacity to do that. So yeah, awesome. Let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Bryggande Höllandaren as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys at some point soon. I do have a beer to review from these guys in July, if memory serves me correctly. I think it's a sour one this time, actually. But let me know your own thoughts in the comment section below. Check out my social media, check out theirs, give me some other Belgian blonde recommendations, and I will catch you guys in the next review. This one was the Blonde Sonja 5.9% Belgian blonde Patters beer, Belgian pale ale, I guess we could say, from the Bryggande Höllandaren in Gnesta near Stockholm here in Sweden. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.